I'm working on a city exploration game where you can enter every building and interact with everything. My city is currently populated by a bit over 1 million unique and persistent NPCs, and today I'd like to talk about the dynamic dialogue system that I have planned to make sure the NPCs are reactive and have distinct personalities, without using repeating templates or rigid scripts. Keep in mind though that I just started implementing the things I'll be talking about, so everything I describe is still subject to change. But first, a shout out to my patrons on Patreon. I promised every patron naming rights to one of the NPCs in the city, and I will send out a form for it before the next playtest. So your named NPC will be part of it, as well as the final game. Of course, with over 1 million NPCs in total, I can't guarantee that you will actually run into them while exploring the city, but they will spawn in every city seed, so stay tuned for announcements. Okay, since we're talking about NPC dialogue, I'd like to get one thing out of the way first. I will not be using large language models for any of it, so all of the dialogue will be handwritten. I'm not completely against generative AI if it's trained and used ethically, and I have looked into it, but ultimately decided against it. I won't list every reason why, as I'm sure you're all aware of the main issues with LLMs, but the biggest one for me is simply quality. Every real-time AI NPC demo I've seen resulted in the blandest, most predictable dialogue imaginable, and that is not what I'm going for. I want my NPCs to have subtlety to their personalities and to be capable of surprising the player occasionally, which can only be achieved by intentional human writing, not a stochastic parrot that outputs the most probable result for its prompt. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about how exactly I will ensure that the NPC dialogue stays fresh, unpredictable, and unique for such a large number of NPCs, as of course I can only write so many lines by hand. When I planned this dialogue system, I had two main goals in mind. One, that the dialogue tree has variation from one person to another, so it will rarely or preferably never have the exact same options for the player to choose from, apart from maybe the very beginning of the relationship when there's just not much to say. And two, that the interactions with the same character evolve over time and may be affected by external circumstances, so you can never just exhaust a dialogue tree to the point where your favorite NPC has absolutely nothing to say for the rest of the game. My planned approach is set to achieve both goals, and here's how. I was actually inspired by the game Slay the Princess, which has a wonderfully reactive dialogue, even though you only talk to one character throughout the game. There will be mild spoilers for the game, so if you haven't played it, please pause my video and go play it. It's a short but awesome indie game. Okay, spoilers now. In Slay the Princess, you interact with the princess, and the things you do or say determine who she becomes in the next chapter of the game. Each chapter is self-contained, and there is a limited number of them, so you may get the same version of the princess on multiple playthroughs, but despite that, the transitions between them are so organic that each playthrough feels like a unique and coherent story. That's why I decided to adopt a similar approach for my NPCs, except instead of becoming different versions of themselves, they will take on a different state of mind depending on the player's actions, their personality, and possibly external factors. This will hopefully make for a dynamic and ever-evolving dialogue. To represent a character's state of mind, I use a state machine. Using state machines for NPC AI is nothing new, but they usually control combat or traversal behavior. I don't see why I couldn't use it purely for the dialogue though. The state in my case would determine which dialogue gets displayed when interacting with the player, and which other states this character's mind could potentially transition to. Each state of mind has its own completely self-contained dialogue tree with unique possible interactions and potential exit transitions to other states. For example, a character may start their interactions with the player in a neutral state, since the player is a stranger and there's nothing important going on, but then the player may irritate them so much that they will transition into an annoyed state of mind, in which they will refuse to say anything of importance until the player leaves them alone for a while. Or the player may act so nice that they will transition to a happy state of mind, in which new dialogue options may open up, and they will become more willing to share information or help them on their quests. There will be more nuanced states than that, of course, as I'm planning to add quite a few, and they may be affected by the events in the world rather than just the player, but I want to make sure that a character's state of mind always has an opportunity to evolve in a way that a real person's mood and mindset may evolve from day to day. But then there's the other problem. How do I make sure that different characters don't act in the exact same way if the player makes the same dialogue choices, since their dialogue trees are ultimately the same? In Slay the Princess, the game prevents the player from making the same choices on subsequent playthroughs by disabling dialogue options that they've already used. Obviously, this is not an option for me, so I do it by giving my characters personality traits and by making the dialogue tree probabilistic, meaning when a player chooses a dialogue option, the NPC has several potential responses. Which one they will pick will depend on their personality traits as well as some randomness. For example, when you ask a character to tell you their name, the ones with a high social personality trait will tell you right away, whereas others may need some convincing. I've thought about using the scientific personality theory to determine my NPC's potential personality traits, but ultimately decided to have a simpler and more chaotic approach. I just have a list of indefinite length that I keep adding random personality traits and quirks to, in no particular order of importance, as I write the dialogue trees. Then each NPC rolls a value from 0 to 1 for each of those personality traits, and that set of numbers becomes their personality. This will most likely result in a very long list of traits and numbers, but that's okay because my goal is to make the NPCs feel like they have a consistent personality through dialogue, not to categorize them into boxes. Also, the random factor in the NPC's responses is fixed for each conversation to prevent the player from cheesing by reloading the game or trying to have the same conversation repeatedly hoping for a different response. The NPCs may respond differently to the same question in different conversations, but if it's the same one, their response will be the same. Apart from personality traits, I am also storing gameplay and dialogue flags for each NPC, which is standard practice for most RPGs. This is a simple way of making sure the NPC has a kind of a memory of what the player said or did or what happened to them. Each flag has a name and a potential expiration time, but there's no limitation to how many flags there can be, so I can just keep adding as many as necessary for a coherent conversation. For example, right now if you insult or hit a character, they will receive an offended flag, which has an expiration time of several in-game hours. If you talk to a character with this flag, they will expect an apology before any other interaction, which removes the flag if they accept it. And of course, even if they don't accept the apology, once the flag expires, they will forget all about it. These temporary flags also act as limitations to how much you can interact with a single NPC at one time. Although I said that I want the dialogue to be ever-evolving, I don't want the player to spend too much time interacting with the same character or to go through too many of their states too quickly. So major dialogue points and transitions will all have a cooldown period during which the NPC's dialogue may be limited. For example, right now if you pester a certain character too much, they will become annoyed for about an hour of in-game time. So in order to progress a relationship with an NPC, you will have to space out your interactions with them. And because a particular character may be pretty hard to find repeatedly in such a huge city, I've added a way you can keep tabs on them if they want you to. You will have a contact list, which I just started working on, where you'll be able to see all the information you know about a certain character and new information will fill in as you learn it. And yes, there will be headshots and more information here later. This is just my starting point. So when you initially encounter an NPC, you can ask them for a home or work location, and if they like you enough, they will tell you and invite you to visit. This is how you can repeatedly find the same character to interact with them later. And this is pretty much where I'm at right now. By the way, this is just the start of the work on the dialogue, and I have just begun to implement all the things I've outlined in this video, and a lot may still change, but feel free to tell me what you think about this plan. I am aiming to implement a wide range of relationship arcs for the NPCs, such as friendship, rivalry, betrayal, admiration, and maybe even romance, as long as it's appropriate and tasteful. Are there any others you'd like to see? Let me know and stay creative!